lots of speakers online. We've got lots of tech going on. We've got lots of things we're trying to manage here in the room as well. But our first speaker, Lisa from Lisa Thompson from the NCOSE, who are wonderful hosts. So first of all, I want to say thank you very much for hosting us. And hopefully you're going to enlighten us as to what NCOSE's been doing in research in this space and where you think we need to go with this.
Sure. Thank you so much, Tony. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. As Tony said, my name is Lisa Thompson. I'm the Vice President of Research for NCOSE's Research Institute. And it's my job today just to share a little bit about what's going on with the issue of childhood exposure to pornography. So next slide, please. Oh, okay, pardon me, thank you. All right, so I think for many of us who are of a certain age, probably 40 years or older, growing up, neither we or our parents could have imagined that within our lifetimes that there would become a day when children would have these devices that connected them to an invisible global forum where they would be able to access hardcore pornography, and that they would carry these devices with them to school, on the playground, spend hours on them at home, or even alone in their bedrooms. Such a scenario was something was beyond imagining. But as all of us know here today, that's exactly what's happened. So now, instead of facing the dangers of the occasional school playground fight, or even the horrible experience of finding an older relative's stash of pornography magazines, America's children today face a daily threat of exposure to hardcore pornography. That's not only not age appropriate, but which normalizes sexual behaviors ranging from risky sexual behaviors, ranging from things like group sex to strangulation. So today, the most dangerous playground, the internet, is now literally in our children's pockets. So what does this mean for how much is this happening? Well, pornography exposure and its use is a routine part of most children's growing up. In fact, a 2023, this one is from this particular study from 2022, surveyed over 1,300 teens who were aged 13 to 17 and found that 54% had seen pornography at the age of 13 or younger. That's a pretty tender age to be seeing some of the stuff that's available on mainstream pornography sites. And those teens reported viewing pornography while they were at school, attending school in person, and that they were doing so even on school-issued devices. This is certainly not what most of us are anticipating or expecting when we send our children to schools or when schools issue these devices to kids. Now, what do children say about their experiences to exposure to pornography? What do they think about it? Well, for many of them, it's causing a lot of anxiety and trauma and emotional distress, great emotional distress. Here are some comments from young people who have grown up consuming pornography. One male who was 19-year-old said, "Because of porn, I have slowly become unsociable towards my friends and family, and I have never been able to have a romantic relationship with anyone beside the screen of my computer." Another 18-year-old male said, "I've been struggling for so long, and it's taxing on my mind and body. I'm tired and have little motivation, which often leads me to skipping homework assignments and social gatherings just because of porn. I'm honestly scared for my future and my relationships and my well-being." A 16-year-old female said, "I think pornography has made me react positively to non-consensual sex and violence against women." And finally, this 19-year-old, who was well known around the world, the pop star Billie Eilish, said, "I think it really destroyed my brain, and I feel incredibly devastated that I was exposed to so much porn." So that's what young people have been saying about their experience to pornography exposure. And in the time I have today, these are very brief presentations that we're making today. I can't begin to go into the reams of research that are out there that link pornography with a wide variety of harms, but things like casual sexual behavior, sex under the influence of alcohol, trying the various sex acts that are depicted in pornography. But I thought I would just highlight a few pieces of information of literature that connect with what we were hearing in those quotes from the young people that I just shared. One of the areas where we find an impact from pornography is in poor emotional bonds with caregivers. So a nationally representative survey of youth aged 9 to 17 reported that online pornography users were significantly more likely to report a poor emotional bond with their caregiver. So the more you watch porn, the more impact there was, the poorer your relationship was with your family member, with your caregiver. And the poorer the emotional bond with the caregiver, the child was also associated with more sexually aggressive behavior. So who of us as parents want a poorer relationship with our children? But that's what pornography will give you. Poorer academic achievement. The more adolescents view pornography online, the poorer their grades. And we heard, like one of the young people in that quote I just shared, one of the quotes I just shared, was commenting on the fact that he had little motivation, that he didn't want to do his homework because pornography was consuming his attention and taking away his energy and his desire to even do homework. And then we have the issue of sexual offending. So there's a national longitudinal study of sexual offenses, things that included sexual harassment, coercive sex, and rape among young people aged 10 to 12 years old, that reported that after controlling for other potentially influential characteristics, that current exposure to violent pornography was strongly associated with sexual violence perpetration. So these are some of the influences and impacts that we're seeing from pornography exposure. And when we have such high percentages of kids seeing it, being exposed, and using it, sometimes on a regular basis now, large numbers of children interacting and engaging with pornography, even on a weekly basis, for some of them, these will be the types of impacts that they will be dealing with, sometimes for decades. The impact on their motivation, on their learning, on their relationships with peers, actually having a relationship with a real person, and how they get along with their families. So we're so delighted that we can be a part of this, just share some of these highlights today, so that we can hear from experts in the field of technology who are working on age verification technologies to help protect our children from exposure to these types of material. But as I wrap up, I'll just end with this quote from the wonderful activist Colin Karchner, who tragically is now deceased. But in his work, he's well known for his work with children who were struggling with pornography addiction. And he said, "Giving our kids with undeveloped brains untethered access to all social expression is like giving them a loaded gun with zero training. We are giving our children the key to the family car at the age 12 with no driver's education. And then we sit back and wonder why they keep crashing and burn." So with that, hand it back over to Tony. Thank you.
Lisa, thank you very much. Really insightful. So very pleased to be able to welcome Helen Taylor from ExoCry. I am just introducing the group. There we go. Helen, yours okay.
Just checking you can hear me.
Yes, we might have to turn you down slightly in the room, but yes, we can definitely hear you. When you want to move to the next slide, you have to shout next slide, please, because I don't think you can control the slides from your end. But,
Got next slide.
take it away.
Okay, perfect. I don't actually have any slides, so it'll just be me speaking. Good to go? Okay. Well, just to build on from what my brilliant colleague in the movement, Lisa Thompson, has been sharing, I'm going to speak about some of the harms of pornography to children, but focusing as well on the non-consensual aspect of the very content that they're consuming. So this speech is titled Pornography in 2024, Barely Legal, which is a known genre of pornography. It is often emphasized in our movement that pornography now is very different to our parents' glossy Playboy magazines. While this is very true, it should also be noted that A&E's 2022 series, Secrets of Playboy, unearthed allegations of coercion, sexual assault, drugging, and manipulation within the Playboy empire from various women over decades. So Playboy certainly doesn't get a free pass in my view. It is, however, essential to comment on the current landscape of what we mean when we say porn. Allow me to read some statistics. A 2020 study of 4,009 heterosexual scenes from Pornhub and Xvideos found that 45% of Pornhub scenes included at least one act of physical aggression, while 35% of scenes from Xvideos contained aggression. Teen is overwhelmingly the most frequently mentioned role in porn film titles, over 1,000 more than the second most frequently mentioned. 1/3 of daily total searches on porn sites are for teen porn. Our organization Exodus Cry created a documentary series called Beyond Fantasy, which is available to watch for free on beyondfantasy.com, that included investigating the barely legal genre, which frequently depicts girls as young children with schoolgirl outfits, pigtails, lollipops, and teddy bears as props. We found clips where girls were instructed to say lines on camera such as, "I'm Courtney, I'm 12 and a half," and the pornographer responds with, "Wow, that's hot." In a later scene, the same pornographer asks, "Did anyone ever molest you like this before?" And she replies, "My stepdad, he does it just like you do." In 2018, the teen category on Pornhub got 33.5 billion visits, and teen has consistently topped the charts for the most searched term on Pornhub for 6+ years, according to their most popular search terms that Pornhub releases each year. It's also important to mention that the amount of child sexual abuse material online has exploded in the past 2 decades. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children revealed that in 1998, there were 3,000 reports of child sexual abuse material, or otherwise known as child porn. By 2014, that number was 1 million. In 2023, that number was 36 million. A Swedish study found that 70% of high school boys who were frequent viewers of porn, included that which features violence and the sexual abuse of children and animals, reported that porn made them want to try out what they had seen. And consistent with other research, one study showed that almost half, 46.9%, of those surveyed said that their porn tastes and preferences then escalated to the point of them being interested in more extreme porn that has previously disinterested or even disgusted them. In a survey of 1,500 young adult men, 56% said their taste in porn had become increasingly extreme or deviant. When it comes to access, 53% of kids in the US right now have their own smartphones by age 11. That stat is actually 5 years old, and the data points to that percentage increasing and the age getting younger. We often hear from parents who are distraught that their child was able to easily get around safety filters and onto sites like Pornhub, which until very recently didn't even have a click if you're over 18 button to enter. Just one generation ago, you had to physically visit somewhere like a gas station selling pornographic magazines to be able to reach the top shelf and show an ID proving you were over 18 to purchase. Now every child with access to a device and Wi-Fi connection is just 2 clicks away from some of the most violent, degrading, racist, incest-themed, abusive video content. In 2020, our organization spearheaded a campaign we called Trafficking Hub, which was supported by hundreds of other organizations, including our friends at the National Center on Sexual Exploitation, to raise awareness of the lack of moderation on Pornhub, calling for accountability for them for knowingly hosting and monetizing criminal content. Major credit cards have since cut ties, and there have been a number of serious consequences for the company, including 91% of their unverified content being removed. But during this time, I personally spoke with dozens of victims who found videos of them underage, sometimes being raped, sometimes while unconscious, or videos uploaded from when they were being trafficked. Some of the girls I personally spoke with were 13 or 14 in these videos, and it had taken them months to get the videos of their violent abuse removed. These videos were often re-uploaded by a different user. More than 300 brave victims are now suing MindGeek, as it was formerly known. Over the past 15 years, I've personally worked with hundreds of survivors of sex trafficking across 12 different countries, and many of them had videos of them made during their trafficking that were later uploaded to porn sites. For these victims, their abuse is immortalized online on websites where anyone can upload videos, then downloaded by millions of viewers for their own personal consumption, and further monetized by a billion-dollar industry, essentially layer upon layer of abuse and trauma. It's important to emphasize this because not only are children being exposed to adult content, i.e. hardcore graphic porn, this content that they are consuming may well also really be videos of non-consensual abuse, i.e. rape and trafficking. We recently interviewed a young woman named Christina who was coerced and exploited on the porn set of a company called Girls Do Porn, which was one of Pornhub's biggest partner channels with 680 million views. Later, the owners, employees of Girls Do Porn were indicted and jailed on charges of sex trafficking by force, fraud, and coercion. However, the videos of Christina are still on porn sites to this day. The now deceased famous pornographer Max Hardcore told us face-to-face in an interview we did with him, "I pushed to the maximum, to the absolute limit, and some women I have pushed over the limit." In both the porn industry and the pornographic user-generated videos on sites such as Pornhub, non-consensual and underage images and videos of women and children are uploaded and then accessed easily and freely by children consuming neurologically traumatizing content. With a simple typing of porn into a search engine or other often very innocent terms, without safety filters that not every parent, teacher, or carer is able to monitor, children are exposed with zero barriers to real videos of real abuse and trafficking victims. Our organization is supporting many of these survivors with trauma therapy to help them recover from what they've endured. Right now, kids worldwide are growing up with real abuse as their sex education with little to no real guidelines, educational protections. This has to change. Online regulations and age verification that the AVPA and others are proposing are long overdue, and it's clear that we as a global community must act to steer our societal ship in a direction that ultimately chooses to prioritize the protection of children. Thank you so much.
Unfortunately, we couldn't see you in the room, but we can see you online, so everyone can see what you were saying, hear what you were saying. But we're just fixing that in the room. So thank you very much for that. I'm going to move on to the next speaker, but I think I just want to check if Adam is online or not. If not, I may ask Brad to come forward. Brad, come forward. I'll just have to skip through a few slides. We may have to come back to Adam if he's able to join us. Just there for moving forward.
All right, this actually works out well because most of what I know about the subject I learned from Adam, and then Adam and I did compare notes and created presentations that cover a lot of the same ground. So the fact that he's not here, I'll just cover his ground for him, and that'll solve the duplication problem. As Ian mentioned, this is a very live issue here in the U.S. now because many states over the past couple of years have instituted these age verification laws for pornography websites. There's a number of, let's see here. Oh, sorry, this slide, this thing. There we go. Yep. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I think there's about 23 different states at this point that have some kind of law like this on the books. There's minor differences between them. Texas is one of the most well-written laws, and the Texas law has now been challenged up to the Supreme Court. So this case is called Free Speech Coalition versus Paxton. So this certainly has the potential to be, probably will be, the most important obscenity law case in the U.S. since Ashcroft versus ACLU, which came before the court in 2002 and 2004. It is specifically assessing the constitutionality of this law, Texas HB 1181. So the history of the case is the district court initially enjoined against the law. So basically just said, temporary injunction, this law cannot go into effect because there's concerns about it. Doesn't mean the law is necessarily voided and stricken down, but it temporarily is enjoined proceeding further or pending further legal proceedings. The Fifth Circuit Court then earlier this year, so it was appealed up to circuit court. The Fifth Circuit Court vacated the injunction, said, actually, we think this law looks pretty sound, and so it can go ahead and go into effect pending further trial. Then the plaintiffs appealed, the Free Speech Coalition representing the pornography industry, and the Supreme Court granted certiorari and is going to be hearing the case this winter. So amicus briefs at this point are due November 22nd. So why is this case so important? As I noted, more than 20 states have now passed similar age verification laws. The Texas law is the first one that goes to the Supreme Court, and this ruling could very well determine the constitutionality of all of those laws and many future attempts to impose these common sense barriers on access to adult content. So it's also the first really big constitutional test for the concept of age verification since Ashcroft in 2004, which was assessing a federal law, a federal age verification requirement law. And the Supreme Court at that point deemed that law unduly restrictive. It believed that it would have a chilling effect on protected adult speech. It was too difficult for adults to have to go through this process of age verification. They might be afraid that their private identification would be leaked online, and so they would be hesitant to access this constitutionally protected material. The court said, absolutely, it's children really, like the court did not dispute that children should not have access to this material. All of the justices said, look, this is obviously not good for kids, but we need to find a way to prevent kids from accessing it in a way that doesn't meddle with First Amendment rights of adults. They also believed that age verification was likely to be less effective than content filters. Now, so that was all back in 2004. Now, a crucial issue here is the issue of scrutiny, what level of scrutiny the court applies. So back in Ashcroft, the court applied, this is actually not completely clear, and this is one thing that Adam Kandub is working on in his brief, but the court seemed to say that strict scrutiny needs to apply to that law in Ashcroft because this is a matter of limiting adults' protected speech. And so therefore it has to meet these, kind of jump these hurdles of showing that this is the least restrictive means, it's the most effective means. There's a very compelling government interest. The Fifth Circuit, however, ruled that in fact rational basis rather than strict scrutiny applies. And this is going back to a 1968 case regulating children's access to basically buying adult magazines at pornographic brick and mortar stores. And age verification was required for that. You had to show a driver's license or something. The Supreme Court said, look, this is a reasonable law. It easily meets the standard of rational basis. The stricter standard was applied for online age verification. And the question is, which is the proper standard to apply? So going before the Supreme Court, they will not just be ruling on or potentially they might rule on the merits of the Texas law, or they might just rule on the question of what is the appropriate standard of scrutiny to apply. So I'm actually going to skip forward to this chart really quick. So this, as I best understand, I'm not an attorney, but this is my best understanding of the kind of different options before the court. In theory, they could do any of these different things. And the color coding is kind of red is the one that we least want to happen. The court goes ahead and strikes down the Texas statute. Now they could remember that this is just a preliminary injunction. So they could go ahead and say, you know what, we're going to go ahead and rule on the law. We're going to say the law is good and we uphold the law. We're going to say the law is bad and we're going to strike down the law. Or they could just say the law it's a complicated enough question that it should go to a full trial, right? And so therefore, we're going to uphold the injunction while the full trial proceeds. We're going to strike down the injunction while the full trial proceeds. And they could apply a strict scrutiny standard and say that the law actually meets that strict scrutiny standard. Or they could say, no, the Fifth Circuit was correct. The rational basis scrutiny is the appropriate level of scrutiny. And so it's not, therefore the law doesn't have to meet this very high burden of proof. So probably the most likely scenario here is that yellow one, where they might well say that the Fifth Circuit was wrong to apply rational basis scrutiny, and they'll send it back down to the Fifth Circuit and say, you need to evaluate this based on strict scrutiny, the way Ashcroft ruled. And then the case will continue. But we are hoping for one of the green or blue outcomes here. Now, whoops, there we go. So the legal objectives for the case, we kind of want to make arguments based on two fronts. One, there's a narrow argument, right, where we say, okay, let's assume for the sake of argument that strict scrutiny does in fact apply here, and that which is what the plaintiffs are saying. The plaintiffs are saying the Fifth Circuit got this wrong. The Fifth Circuit contradicted Ashcroft. This needs to go on strict scrutiny. And the plaintiffs think if it's on strict scrutiny, it will fail. We would want to argue, even on strict scrutiny, it succeeds because Ashcroft is simply out of date. The technology has changed. Filters are no longer sufficiently effective given technological changes, right? So one of Ashcroft's claims was content filters get the job done, right? Parents can regulate this. Looking at, just look the previous two presentations. If 73% of teenagers have viewed pornography, that doesn't mean 73% of parents want them to. Very small percent of parents want them to. That means almost 73% of content filtering regimes are failing, right? So filters are no longer sufficiently effective. A lot of that relates to the advent of the smartphone, which was just not envisioned at the time of Ashcroft. Second, age verification technology has improved. It's vastly improved. It's far more effective, far more anonymous than was available back at the time of Ashcroft, and therefore it is the least restrictive means at this point. It can be done quickly, cheaply, anonymously, and securely. But we also, while making that narrow argument and saying that this law should hold up on that basis, and that's going to be a really key set of technical arguments regarding some of the legal technicalities and also the nature of the technology, we also hope to use this case to make a much broader argument. The court was afraid in Ashcroft that that age verification would have a chilling effect on adult speech. Well, we want to contend that Ashcroft has had a chilling effect on legislative speech. Legislatures for the last 20 years have felt their hands tied in addressing this epidemic of pornography because they're afraid they're going to fall afoul of the Supreme Court. So what we want to argue is that this content that we're talking about is obscene and therefore not even constitutionally protected. It doesn't qualify for First Amendment protection. We want to argue, in keeping the presentations you've already heard, that porn's harms have escalated to the point of demanding government action. And we want to argue that the rapidly changing technological environment demands that we have judicial restraint and legislative flexibility, right? So the court needs to take a back seat and say, look, it's not for us as the court to say, this is the best technology right now, therefore all laws must conform to this technology. Rather, the court needs to say, look, this is obviously a big problem. Legislatures need space to respond to rapidly changing technologies with rapidly developing technological solutions. And we want to kind of untie the hands of legislators to do that. So this is kind of the strategy that's being pursued in a lot of different amicus briefs that are being filed. I'm pleased to report that I believe when I checked this morning, there's 22 amicus briefs that I'm aware of that are being filed in support of the Texas law in this case, several others under consideration. And we're trying to make a whole range of different arguments, both kind of about the technology, about the kind of judicial precedents, about the separation of powers, about the harms of pornography. And so if anyone tuning into this is interested in being part of that amicus effort, I would really encourage you to reach out to me or one of my colleagues. I don't know if my email address is on this slide, but it's littlejohn@eppc.org. So thank you.
Thank you, Brad. That's brilliant. It's really interesting what you got on screen here about this is not your grandpa's porn. When I gave evidence in the original case in the Austin federal court, the judge that was hearing the case, his benchmark for pornography was Last Tango in Paris. And the assistant attorney general said he said, this is the first and only time I'm ever going to say this to a federal judge, but you really need to go and watch some porn. Because he just could not get his head around some of the evidence in terms of what is actually available online. If you're using Last Tango in Paris, which I think was about 1971 as a film, as your benchmark for what's pornography, you're a long way off what you're looking at. So thank you very much. And that's really great. 3 great introductions there to why this is really important, the effects it's having on children in the US and around the world, and the real importance of this case, which is a once in a generation. They kind of get to this question about once every 20 years or so. So we had, I think Ginsburg was like late 60s. We had Reno, which is in the 90s. We had Ashcroft in the early 2000s. This is going to be the case of the next 20 years or so, I would imagine. So it's a really important one. And when we put this briefing together, what I wanted to do as part of this briefing was to invite the Age Verification Providers Association, who we work really closely with, to come and show some of their wares. And I'm really pleased that Ian Corby and his members have put together, we picked 7 subjects, and then we picked 7 providers independently of the Age Verification Providers Association. So we picked them to give a good, clear overview of what's available. Some of you may have your minds blown by some of the things that can be done. I'm really interested to see Ian, and I'm going to hand over to him to take you through the next 5 or 6 or 7 presentations. Ian.
Thanks very much, Tony. My name's Ian Corby. I'm the Executive Director of the Age Verification Providers Association, and we're a trade association with some 30 members who supply the technology that either does traditional age verification or more novel age estimation techniques, which you're going to hear about today. We're a politically neutral organization, but we have been working hard to try to make sure that these debates amongst policymakers and in the courts are well informed, so that people actually understand what the tech can do, rather than coming to legal conclusions based on, I think, false understanding, quite often deliberate mistruths, I have to say, from people who do know better, because I know they do know better about the technology. But essentially, we're here to help people prove their age online without disclosing their identity. Just to give you a very brief history of our industry, it really started ahead of the 2017 Digital Economy Act in the UK, which was going to require age verification for accessing adult content. For one reason or another, not, I hasten to add, the technology, more to do with politics and something called Brexit, which led a prime minister called Boris Johnson, if you've heard of him, seeking re-election and not wanting to have anything get in the way of that. The government dropped it. But in order to prepare for that, it was the adult websites themselves who realized that their customers wouldn't want to give personal identifying information to an adult site. So they effectively asked an industry to stand up and to do this age verification independently of them, and then simply to say yes or no as to whether somebody is over 18, but without disclosing anything about their identity. And possibly that should have been sufficient. But some people were still a bit nervous about that. And so what was then developed was some age estimation technology, most notably facial age estimation using machine learning. And we'll see some more about that today. So as a trade association, we've grown up with the development of this technology, which has moved forward extremely fast in the last 5 or 6 years. To try to put some order around that, we've developed standards. Before my time, the BSI developed a standard, PAS 1296. We've recently had approved by the IEEE, which is a sort of US international standards body, 2089.1, which is another standard. And then you'll hear more about an international standard, which actually Tony's been the author of a little later on today. So we built the standards, and then we turned our attention to interoperability, because it's quite annoying to have to prove your age to every single website you go to. Particularly now, the demand for age verification is extending well beyond adult content and is particularly important for social media. And we're not going to discuss that in detail today, but there are many US states which are legislating for that too. And some of the European regulators have now become even more demanding. And instead of that simple third-party process to protect your identity, they've been looking for technical solutions to protect your identity. For example, zero-knowledge proof. So when I pass on the information to an adult site that you are over 18, I do that in a way that doesn't require the adult site to have any knowledge of who's passed on that information or who you are. And likewise, if you want to create that proof, you can now do it on your own device. So your personal data never actually leaves the palm of your hand. And again, we'll hear about that today. So as Tony said, we've got a few of our members here. They're not selected because I prefer one over the other. That's a really career limiting move when you're running a trade association to show any sort of favoritism. They're selected to give a broad example of the different methods that we have. So I will start by handing across to Terry Brenner from IDverse. Thank you.
Which is the slide?
Just the slide right.
Okay. Okay, we're missing one. Hi, my name is Terry Brenner. I'm head of legal risk and compliance for IDverse. We are a remote ID verification technology provider. We are a developer in-house of the technology, so everything is proprietary. And some of the information that I'm going to be sharing with you today is based on live experience in terms of what we're actually seeing at the call front. We're going to be breaking this down, looking at optical character recognition, which we refer to as OCR, and document authentication. So let's explain where we are in the process. So if you look on the left of the side, you will see there's a traditional user flow that we use. That will be where there's a privacy consent, and there obviously can be various configurations about this. And then there will be a presentation of the photo ID document. And then my colleague Yoon is going to be speaking later on the selfie and the liveness aspect of the process. So just that you have some context. So I will say this, that as far as it comes to adult entertainment, porn bills, even social media, that documents are not commonly used as part of the verification process. At IDverse, we believe that is probably the most laser sharp method of determining with accuracy the age of an individual, but we realize that there's different contexts in which it may or may not be appropriate. I guess as preferred or as suggested or accepted by regulators or otherwise by companies who are looking to monetize their user flow. But we'll get into a couple of those objections later on. So taking a look here, you can see we've got the OCR on the left and the DFA. And so that's effectively where the end user is going to be presenting his or her ID. The way that we do OCR, for the most part, you may think that it's a template-based system, that's basically learning volumes of business on presentation and presentation again. We do use a Gen AI technology, so it is a quick learning approach to the result of which that we can basically recognize any ID document globally, internationally. To upload the information from that. So it's a much faster process. And the relevance of this is number one, in terms of accuracy of pulling up information. And then that also feeds into user process as well, where companies may say, this is a clunky process. Templating, we understand, has that kind of legacy behind it. OCR is a much more effective process. And then secondly, and this is probably the most critical, is about DFA, which is document fraud analysis. And here it's to establish that the ID document is in fact real, live, and present. So if I can just kind of point to, for example, another strong use case that we see, KYC in the anti-money laundering perspective, the regulator's intention there would be knowing your customer. But if you're receiving a photocopy of an ID document, do you in fact know that that is the ID document of the person who's presenting it, or that it hasn't been corrupted in a certain way? So that is what the DFA engine will be looking at. So now I thought I'd just open it up and we can kind of maybe put it around the table if anyone wants to venture a guess. This is obviously one of the biggest headaches in the industry right now. It's the bad AI. And so the question goes, which ID is not synthetic? So I'll leave it to anyone if they want to venture a guess. Okay, we've got one in the top left. And just for the sake of moving through the presentation, the answer is no. All of them are synthetic IDs. So I think what we're getting to here, when we talk about synthetic IDs, it's not necessarily just an ID document that has synthetic data behind it, for example, using false information. It's also the document itself, as it's perceived on the screen, is a computer-generated image. So it's more than just a false ID that you can pick up at your old college dorm. So now let's take a little progress. And so here, to see kind of a memory lane of a DFA and how it's worked. So this is where a person is presenting themselves. They have placed an actual live face, which was then covered over, because I'm losing the technical term, to produce a kind of a face morphing so that they then be recognized for the purpose of liveness. But now we start getting into some of the documents itself, and you can start seeing this is going back to 2020. We can see context. There's two different surfaces. I'm trying to impute some kind of 3D type imagery, and moving on, even better context, sharper imaging, and moving along even sharper and picking up some security ID features that are used, so that if a person, so what you've basically seen in the progress of these 8 years is initially maybe a lot easier for a person doing manual review to pick it up. But now in using the DFA process, you can actually, it's virtually impossible to be able to see whether this is a real live and present ID or not that was presented by the end user. So let's get a little bit of context, what we've seen in the last couple of years. There are hundreds of websites that we're familiar with that are producing these type of synthetic IDs and other IDs, even the good old-fashioned college dorm styles. But you can look now and see that based on actual presentation, where we've seen an almost doubling of the presentation of synthetic IDs. And this is based on estimates that we've seen, as I said, at the coal front. So how do you pick it up? So that's where we use an approach of computer vision, where you're able to effectively pick up the discrepancies that would suggest where the document has been tampered with, where it's not original, and where in fact maybe a synthetic ID that is not even a real physical document at all. So here, just giving context in terms of this is where we are. Regulator is looking for a certain behavior that they're trying to manage, how you're able now to use good AI to work against bad AI. So I thought, let's just spend a few seconds on this, to dock or not to dock, realizing and accepting that document is not always seen to be an accepted or considered an appropriate method in the verification process. Firstly, it's about the use case, maybe considered to be overreaching. Well, we think that a document plus liveness together is the strongest form of binding. It's used in KYC purposes. In fact, I have a report with me here today that was prepared by Interpol that we contributed to, showing the challenges around synthetic IDs, and I can share that with you after the call, so you can see what's been studied there. Similarly, it's also about context. It depends on the risk. So perhaps social media, okay, no document may be required. That depends. But when it comes to a question of sextortion, sexual violence, emotional distress, possible abuse, harassment, then it may be considered that this is an appropriate method as part of the verification process. Privacy and security, we've come a long way on it. We're able to return minimized data, 21, check. That's it. Nothing else is required. No additional personal data behind that. And then also you're able to configure the data retention periods. You can basically immediately delete any personal data from any storage on the cloud backend. And then the technology has improved a long way. One-way hashes. So virtually, if you do want to store some data, it's virtually impossible. It's decrypted. It's virtually, encrypted, and it's virtually impossible to decrypt it to reverse the data that's been hidden there. The other important thing here is about security risks. And so here we think it's a question of looking at the vendor, considering we are part of the ecosystem to protect the ideals and goals. So there need to be high expectations around security compliance. In State 163, cybersecurity initiatives, guidelines, multiple ISOs. So I think it's also incumbent on the vendors to step up and to meet standards that are required in industry to produce the most secure product possible. And then there are the customer user objections. Users may be uncomfortable about it. Well, that's fine. I accept that. But we think it also depends on the context. If a company is suggesting, so for example, there's an online dating app, if they're suggesting that we are creating a hygienic environment for you to protect you, then that is a different context in terms of where a document may be important or not. That's I guess for them to consider. And then companies don't want to add user friction. This has come a long way now. That process that I just showed you, that took place in 30 seconds. So complete document fraud analysis, depending on the complexity of the document, that's really what we're topping out at. And then the points on the bottom, genuine customers being declined and affected by negative rates. So on that perspective, it's 95% accuracy. It actually is higher. I didn't want to put it on a piece of paper. I'm a lawyer after all. Didn't want to be held accountable to it. But these are standards that are highly, highly accurate on the OCR DFA side. That's it. If there's any questions, I did have my email address, but I'll leave it to Ian to put you on to me. Great. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much. Appreciate that. Just a couple of reminders to our speakers. Be very careful on abbreviations because a lot of people here aren't going to know common abbreviations that we might all use amongst ourselves. And if we can keep to time, that would also be much appreciated. So next up, we have Yoon Kim from Encode, who's going to talk to us about facial recognition and liveness. So there you are. It's just that.
Okay. Thank you everyone today. My name is Yoon, Sales and Go-to-Market Strategy at Encode. Today from Encode's side, I'll be discussing the topic of matching users' face to an image, which is made possible by our proprietary facial recognition and liveness technologies. So Encode has been solving identity for customers across industries and regions ranging from financial institutions, hospitality, retail, and adult content social media since our conception in 2015. So we have our proprietary document capture and validation that tackles the first part of the ID verification process. And this is very similar to what Terry has described earlier. And after the document scan and validation, our system conducts face capture, recognition, and liveness detection to do face match. And that's how we do this entire ID proofing. So Encode has been investing a lot of resources in the proof of personhood, which is to say that proving a person in front of the device, proving that they are who they say they are. What makes this possible are our proprietary tech stacks shown above here. We have our one-to-one and one-to-N facial recognition that has proven success in production for almost a decade now. One-to-one compares the faces of two images that we know of, while one-to-N compares a face against the vector database of many faces to find a potential match. Our liveness detection here, in the second part of the slide, determines whether the subject is a real person in front of the camera and not a replayed image or video that you can oftentimes see in deepfakes these days. And in today's world, fraudsters can create deepfake videos and images that are honestly impossible for human eyes to detect. And even for legacy systems in facial recognition and liveness, they have a really hard time detecting that they're deepfakes. But our newly released liveness tackles these challenges by analyzing depth across multiple frames in real time instead of relying on movement-based liveness check or a single snapshot. So we have improved liveness detection by 7 times compared to previously. And we've been really trying hard to tackle the deepfakes. And as you can see over there, we have document validation that Terry also described earlier. We have facial age estimation, which Yoti will go over a little bit later, but it helps estimate the age of a subject by a face scan. And this adds to the signals of the facial recognition that we perform. So now let me dive into real life scenarios in age assurance. So if I'm a child trying to access adult content or access social media, I could be using my mom's ID, for example, to get through document scan. And when I'm prompted to take a selfie, I might take a picture of myself. And this can be easily detected by our system because the facial recognition module will find out that the image from the ID is different from my selfie. There's a second scenario. I'm using my mom's ID, and when prompted to take a selfie, instead of using my own face, I can replay an image of my mom, and this will be detected through our liveness check, since we know that it's a screen or a paper replay or a deep fake. Also know that we are able to have, we have capabilities to detect and prevent any kind of deepfake injections that divert the device camera. So we know through our SDK that we are able to block any stream of data that is not through the device camera in real time. And in our last scenario, we also have me using a fake ID of my face and a selfie of myself. But as Terry was mentioning earlier, our document validation will determine the document is fake. At the same time, we have an additional module of age estimation, which will determine that my estimated age varies or differs from the ID date of birth extracted from the document. And in light of today's discussion, I also want to discuss briefly another use case that we've been tackling with our customers in adult content and social media. There are a lot of proliferated images and videos of content that are not consented by the individuals that are in the content. And Encode has been working with our customers to combat these deepfakes and generated images in order to make sure that people who are in the videos or images that are circulating online on content or streamed content are who they say they are, and they know that they are in that content. So Encode has been working with our customers to enhance online safety in this manner. So we use our comprehensive technology to check to match the face to the user and ensure that the user is who they say they are. So we think the facial biometrics is a crucial link that ties digital identity directly to a real world identity. And these require a lot of engineering efforts, and we have been giving constant effort to innovate. So I just want to wrap up by saying Encode is really at the forefront of innovating in biometrics, and we believe that biometrics is a central tenet for digital identity. Very, very excited to be in this conversation today. Thank you for having us, and looking forward to connecting with everyone today. Thank you.
Thank you, Yoon. Appreciate that. Yeah, obviously, I mean, there's a number of arguments that are put up against age verification and age estimation by opponents, and one of them is, oh, well, with AI, it's all pointless. Anything can be faked. You can fake an image of a person, you can fake an image of an ID, but the technology is clever, and you can use AI to spot AI. In fact, we have a joint project with the Swiss and with privately, who are going to speak later, and Tony's company, IDIAP, which is a group of academics who are very smart about these things, where we've actually been funded by the Swiss and the UK governments to find ways to use AI to spot AI. And that'll be quite an exciting announcement when we get to the conclusion of that. But we are not worried. We are not seeing widespread evasion of our techniques. Next up is Omari Rodney from Yoti. Omari is going to be joining us remotely. Omari, I may need to move the slides on for you, I think. So if you could just say next slide when you wish to. But otherwise, you're going to talk to us about facial age estimation. So over to you.
Yeah, just want to make sure you can hear me.
Clear.
Okay, great. So hi, I'm Omari Rodney. I'm the Chief Product Engineer at Yoti. I'll be talking to you about facial age estimation. Next slide, please. Great. So facial age estimation is an age assurance technique. It's been used across the world today. It gives consumers an accessible, fast, privacy-preserving way to prove their age. It doesn't matter what their gender, ethnicity, financials are. Everyone's got a face. Everybody can use it. Next slide, please. So the process is really simple. All a person needs is access to a device with a camera and their own face. They can look into the camera and then, using the same behavior as unlocking their smartphone or their laptop, their face is immediately analyzed. We estimate the age, their image is deleted, and the estimated age result is returned. Next slide, please. The results most commonly returned are an age over or age under. So, for example, we frequently see the results being returned as either ages over 21 or over 18, or there's the option to have an age under. So it could be this person is under the age of 16. What this means is that an age can be provided without revealing the real age or any additional information about the person who has had their age estimated. Next slide, please. So an age estimation on average takes around 1 to 2 seconds. It's really quick. The images are not stored. They're not shared with the relying parties. They're not checked against any pre-existing databases. So there's no need to be concerned about things like hard or soft linking of somebody's behavior to any unrelated activities. There's no biometric templates generated from the images. The process is instant and it is anonymous. Before generating a result, a NIST Level 2 passive liveness test is run against the face capture. So this is to ensure that the face being estimated is a real live person. And it's not a video, it's not a picture of somebody else, it's not a 3D printed mask, or there hasn't been any manipulation of the hardware or input device. So in effect, people aren't trying to deep fake their way through the system. This can all be integrated through a flexible API, bringing the security and power of an anonymous age estimation into any website, app, or even a physical sales terminal. We've performed over 600 million age checks across all over the world, across a range of sectors. For example, we're operating in the adult industry, retail and gaming, telecoms, some of the largest social networks, dating and gaming. This technique is also used by law enforcement to assess the ages of victims and perpetrators in CSAM, and to support charities in the help of removal of non-consensual content from platforms. Next slide, please. So I just want to go through a bit about how Instagram through Meta are using age estimation today. So with an Instagram account, when somebody changes their date of birth from below 18 to over 18, so perhaps there's a part of Instagram or Meta that they want to access that is age restricted, they're asked to prove their age. Yoti's age estimation is used to analyze the face of the person, perform a liveness check, and to confirm if the user is over 18. Yoti immediately deletes the image and returns the confirmation that the user is an adult or not back to Meta. This has proven to be a highly popular method. When compared to the offer of uploading an ID document, 81% of users have preferred to go down the route of an age estimation. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to cover a bit about how this works. So it's a simple 4-step process. So in the first step, we detect the face, and we turn that face into pixels and turn those pixels into a sequence of numbers. On the second step, using a neural network trained to recognize age by practicing with a diverse set of millions of faces, those numbers are crunched and analyzed. And then in the third step, the AI finds patterns in the numbers and produces an age. And the fourth and final step, the image provided is deleted. Next slide, please. To build up this AI, the amount of data required is extensive. It's really, really hard to get hold of good data. It's really, really, really hard to get hold of good data in an ethical way. We've spent a long time working with our globally available digital ID app to acquire data with our users' permission. During the onboarding process, they are explained how their data may be used. They're given an opt-out, and at any point in time, they can always revoke the use of their data. Next slide, please. So over the years of developing this technology, we have been constantly testing and assessing how age estimation works and how effective it is across different ethnicities, across different genders, across different age ranges. And what you can see now is a table of how accurate age estimation is based on a specific age with a target threshold. And this is often used as a way of ensuring that even though an age estimation is just an age estimation, we can reduce the effective probability of somebody being estimated in the wrong age group to 0%. The benefits of this work over the last few years is that it now produces a set of repeatable and measurable processes and data that can show how effective age estimation can be in the real world. Next slide, please. Age estimation can be deployed in many ways, and it can provide low to high assurance. To reach a low level of assurance, we'd recommend that at least a liveness check is performed. That just ensures that the person being estimated is in front of the camera. To get to medium, we'd suggest that you have a liveness check with age estimation and independent testing, so that any partner or line party has a sense of credibility that the checks that are being performed to a high degree of accuracy. And we recommend to reach a high level of assurance, along with a liveness check and independent testing, that age estimation should incorporate a buffer, so a threshold should be set, and there should be injection attack detection to ensure that people are not manipulating the hardware used to perform the age estimation and capture the images. Thank you for listening, and I hope you found this informative.
Thanks very much, Amari. And if anybody's interested in that, I would commend to them reading Yoti's white paper, which they publish on a regular basis. And year on year, you can see just how the technology's got better and better. And perhaps the gap you need to allow between the age you test for and the legal age that you're requiring gets smaller and smaller without having more and more people be misestimated wrongly. So it's an exciting technology. Next up, we're coming a little closer to home as we're in the United States, and we're heading to the sunny state of Louisiana, I believe. And we're going to hear from Calvin Faber, who's the founder and CEO of Envoc.
Thank you. Yes, I come to you from the Silicon Bayou of Louisiana, where we're about to experience a hurricane. So I was glad to get out of town. So this one right here on the black. Yep. All right. So I'm from a company, Louisiana, called Envoc. We're a software company there in the Silicon Bayou. We were charged with creating a digital driver's license as part of an innovative concept when responding to our state's RFP system. To date, it went live in 2018, and today it has the broadest adoption of any digital credential in the United States. We have 65% of all eligible people using LA Wallet actively. That represents about 1.9 million of our 4.4 or so population. It is accepted by law enforcement as a legal digital credential. We had some legislation passed, HB 54, which makes it equivalent to the plastic credential in Louisiana. So people don't go back and get their purse if they forget their license at home, but they'll turn a plane around if they forget their phone. So we made it equivalent to the plastic credential. It's always with you. Then we had the landmark legislation, HB 142, which is requiring age challenges to access adult content. Now, the principles we use are also purely optional, single use. Anytime you share your digital credential, that's the only time it's being used. no copies. We rely on the data that's either on your phone or at the state's DMV database or nowhere. We don't keep copies of it. So really, if the state goes down, you can't age check at that point, but that's the trade-off that we want for that. And then over here, this is what is the result of HB 142 in Louisiana. If you were to visit this adult content, we are actively age challenging any visitor that we detect is from the state of Louisiana. We have to age check them and make sure that they are 18 or over. Now, I really appreciate all the comments about zero knowledge. I don't want to upload my driver's license to an adult site. I just don't want to do that. So what we do is, remember, we have hurricanes in Louisiana. So our governor back in the day asked us, they said, we need to support all of the people in South Louisiana that have been affected by a hurricane. So can you verify their identity and their residency so that we can send them benefits? So we came up with a two-factor solution. They call into a help desk and they say, I'm displaced. My house is gone. I need help. Can you send me some benefits? They said, the agent will say, open up your LA wallet and put this 4-digit number in it. They put that in and it transfers to the agent the address and name of the person who's displaced. You are in the affected area. Here comes your benefits. You're not in the affected area. Sorry, this is a fraudulent call, right? But they're able to get their benefits by this two-factor method. So we applied this method here to accessing adult content. So when you click the Check My Age button, when you're on this particular website, the compliance company, All Pass Trusts, asks for a challenge code from our system. That challenge code is then put into the digital driver's license, and everything that we do is permissive, meaning we're going to tell you what we're doing with that challenge. So the message here says All Pass Trust, on behalf of an age-restricted website, is requesting access to view your course age. What is course age? Well, under 18 or 18 or over. That's all you need to know, and that's all I'm going to give you. So, and the purpose of that is for age-restricted content. From there, you press approve, and you can see the steps that it goes through. The only information that is transferred back to the compliance company is under 18 or over 18. And you can get with me and I will tell you all about the statistics that we've experienced in Louisiana. And that's it. Thanks. I yield the remainder of my time.
You caught me unawares there because you were moving so fast through that. Thanks very much. That's fascinating, particularly as we know other states are taking on mobile driver's licenses. So there's clearly the opportunity to do something quite similar there as well. I mentioned earlier the ability to perhaps to make it even more privacy preserving than we originally founded the industry. And so next we'll hear from Deepak Tiwari from Privately, who can tell us a bit more about their innovation on that front.
Thank you, Ian. Okay. Well, I'm very glad to be here. My name is Deepak, as the slide suggests. I'm the CEO and founder of Privately. We're a Swiss company based in Lausanne. And the innovation that I'm going to talk to you about, and Yoti has given us a lot of good information, which I don't need to repeat, is facial age estimation and voice age estimation, but that done completely on device. So essentially, we call our innovation multimodal because it can involve face, voice, or a combination of both. But what's very interesting is that presents a number of, it answers a lot of questions that were mentioned by an earlier speaker today, which was, can we do age estimation quickly, cheaply, anonymously, and securely? And in this case, I'd like to show you how. Okay, here I got the video to work, but if you see, it takes a couple of seconds, like the Yoti speaker said before. The interesting thing, a face estimation is a face estimation is a face estimation, but no, it is not. In this case, the facial image never left your device. In fact, the machine learning models or the technology came down to your browser, executed the age check, and never left the device. So the only signal going out of your in this age check is whether the camera saw a person who's an adult or not. And this changes the game. Because if you think about how we can scale this technology, how it can be deployed across millions and millions of age checks, cost has been a big concern of the industry. And if we're able to use the processing power in the device of the user to then roll out age estimation quite broadly, this presents a great opportunity here. Not to say that it also answers the question of privacy, because we've seen in the recent past a lot of objections from parents who misunderstood facial age estimation to be facial recognition. But one of their concerns was, are you uploading my kids' images somewhere? And the answer to that is no, it never leaves your device. But this is something to be explained. Okay. We found a lot of success in retail, particularly, which is where, if I can get this moving there, you will see it's a completely anonymous age estimation when a user approaches the till, and an image could just be flashed to the cashier saying, okay, above 18 or above 25, below 25. This is working in the UK, and it's working in the US as well, in Florida. This technology, by the way, is EAL3. The previous speaker at Yoti was explaining about the different levels of assurance. So this is an EAL3 level assured technology. And we can take it one notch up, if I can get this working, by saying, what if I could validate a further document on your device? And in this case, you see that the person there has been adjudged above 18, but then they could use the NFC reader in their own phones to read off an NFC document and validate their age right there on the device, no information going out. So those were the two, those were some of the innovations I wanted to show you about. Just not to mention, the last bullet on that slide is that we also have a voice-based age estimation technology, which was deployed by actually the adult industry in France. I was able to effectively to detect whether someone was reasonably below 15 years of age. So that by itself, the voice estimation technology only has a lower age assurance level, but in combination with others, it can prove quite interesting. I think last thing I want to say is, okay, sorry. Okay. Finally, I have to say a couple of sentences about the accreditations and certifications. So this is very widely accredited now, at least in Europe. You see in Germany and in the UK. It is also a UK GDPR compliance implementation. So it's important to highlight, because it's not just there has to be a certification behind and proof that this technology entirely works on device. And this can then answer to some of the objections that we have, especially in the US, around data privacy. And it's been audited by the UK regulator as well. Happy to take more questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Deepak. Yeah, I mean, obviously, every company operating in Europe in particular has to be compliant with data protection laws. So every method you've seen today would be compliant with data protection laws. But sometimes people are even more sensitive about their personal data. And that last example, I think, is for some of those of the most sensitive cases where people are particularly, you might say, paranoid about sharing their data and don't trust that people are going to behave legally with their data. So they've got that reassurance of doing it in their hand. We're going to move from doing it in your hand to doing it with your hand. And our next example comes from one of our newest members, a company called Nidemand, and we're going to hear from their Chief Business Officer, Jean-Michel Polly. Over to you, Jean-Michel. I'll have to start your videos and move your slides, so let me know when you want that.
All right, thank you very much. Yes, I'm over in France. This has been a great presentation, a lot of exciting technology, a lot of different technologies. So I need to grab your attention because you may want to take a breather. So what if I told you that, as was just mentioned, we can do age assurance by looking at the movement of your hands, not quite the geometry, but the movement of your hands. Well, that's exactly what I'm going to tell you. And it's not magic. it's physics or it's really physiology. There's been medical research that has linked movements of your hand to your age in a very accurate way. So we've developed AI models with machine learning that leverage the age-specific feature or certain hand movements, basically. And all users have to do, as you'll see in the demo, is do a few hand movements, and their age is verified, or there's age assurance there. And the models basically determines if somebody is over or under a certain age or within a certain age bracket. Next, please. So, I forgot to say next, but this is really what I was going through. So go ahead. I went through this already. So the key benefits, next, yeah. Oh, this is, yeah. The first benefit, if you could go back, please, is obviously that there's no personal data in any way, shape, or form that is required. None, zero, not even metadata. So people ask us about fingerprints, no fingerprints can be captured or detected because we use video, not pictures taken with a PC or the smartphone. Face, as soon as the model determines that there is a facial feature, it stops the webcam and asks the user to move their face away, as you'll see in the demo as well, from the camera. So first key benefit is absolutely no personal data. The second is accuracy. So 99% as validated by the ACCS. Basically, we've done what needs to be done when training an AI model and testing an AI model, separating the testing data sets from the training data sets, using thousands of individuals from different age groups, gender, obviously ethnic groups, and the data sample captured in real life environment with different sets and of technology, smartphone, computer cameras from different eras. So, great accuracy. Next, please. And it's been highlighted, getting age verified cannot be, cumbersome, and it's definitely not. And you'll see in the demo that it takes only a few seconds. Reliability, you cannot fake physics or medicine, or medical research has proven that these age-specific features are true universally, and you cannot fake them. Of course, if somebody would record the movements of somebody else's hand, we would pick that the fact that it's not a real hand, it's a recording or picture on the camera. Hand mannequins, gloves also are detected and rejected by our AI. So I could speak for hours about the technology. I'm very excited about it. But the best thing I must do now is shut up and let you see how it works. So if you can press the play. So the camera is activated. First movement. Then there's a series of hand positions that are asked of the user. And at one point, it's me on the camera, and I'm going to show my face, and you'll see that as the AI recognizes that a face starts being shown before it's shown entirely. It's going to happen pretty soon now. Here you go. Up. No, please remove away your face from the camera, and we're done. And I'm definitely over 18, unfortunately. And that's about it.
Thank you. I have to say, I was quite. Thank you. I was quite skeptical when I first saw that, which only came across our desks just a few months ago, and but Tony, who runs a testing lab in Manchester, England, has put it through its paces and confirmed that the claims are accurate, which is what he does for everybody, all their methods, so that we can be reassured that the sort of things we're presenting on an occasion like this do stand up to third-party scrutiny. They're not just the brave claims of a salesperson, because nobody would ever try that, would they? Next we have another relatively new innovation, and that's email address estimation. And that comes to us from a company called Verify My. And speaking to us today will be Andy Lulham, their COO. So over to you, Andy.
Hi, thanks, Ian, and thanks to everyone for their time today. As Ian mentioned, my name's Andy Lulham, and I'm the Chief Operations Officer at Verify My. We're a safety tech provider HQ'd here in London with an age assurance solution covering a wide range of verification and estimation methods. I'd like to introduce our email address age estimation method, which can determine a user's age to a high degree of accuracy via user behavior, or more specifically, just by using their email address. And next slide, please. So how does it work? Well, I'll start by actually saying how it doesn't work, as there are a couple of common misconceptions. Firstly, is that it has nothing to do with the age of the email address, nor is it related to the contents of that email account or any emails within it. Rather, we get past an individual's email address either via a relying platform's API, or it can be manually inputted by an end user. The email address is then analyzed using our proprietary algorithms, and we also query it against a range of external data sources or data aggregators to establish other sites and apps that the email address has previously been associated with or used to transact with. Utilizing this data, our algorithm builds a detailed digital footprint of the user, from which statistical analysis builds an age profile and returns an estimated age of the owner of that email address. We can then authenticate ownership of the email address by the individual who is attempting to prove their age by sending a time-sensitive one-time passcode to that email account, which the user must click before we confirm that the individual is, for example, over 18. It can be used to determine any age, but is most typically deployed to establish whether someone is over 18 or an adult in order to access adult entertainment site or to buy other age-restricted products and services. And it's currently deployed by numerous businesses across pornography, across social media, e-commerce, and other age-restricted sectors on a global basis. And the next slide, please. So what are the benefits of using email address age estimation? Firstly, it's very user-friendly and low in friction. Users are typically very familiar with sharing their email address, for example, to create an account with a website or app. We sometimes do this dozens of times on a daily basis. Whilst this is not the typical user journey of an individual entering a porn site, if a user is already logged into a relying platform with an email address that has already been verified or authenticated to be theirs, then the process can be entirely free from friction. Results are returned in between 3 and 4 seconds typically, and these factors mean it is viewed favorably by both end users but also by relying parties, as there is minimal disruption to user journeys. The method's also fully inclusive. It's very unlikely that a web user will not own an email address, and it can be used by anyone regardless of their location, their gender, their age, their ethnicity. And we've tested across more than 40 countries, and they return results without any discernible bias. And we also have a white paper where you can read far more details into that testing. It's, as I said, it's highly accurate. It's therefore highly effective in preventing children from accessing pornography or any other age-appropriate product or content. Like many of the methods that have previously been mentioned, it's also been independently tested by the Age Check certification scheme up to evaluation assurance level 3. Across that testing at the 18+ threshold, it returned 0% false positive rate. That is, that it did not estimate any children as adults. It also had a true positive rate of 84%. That is, for every 100 actual adults, it determined 84 successfully to be over 18. The remaining 16% were not estimated to be children. It's worth flagging. We simply didn't have enough information to return a result, and these individuals would have needed to go on and use another method that we offer. It's also privacy preserving and doesn't require any identity documents or other sensitive personal data. As you've heard from others, zero knowledge results are returned to the relying platform, and data is deleted when a check is complete. The UK's data regulator, the Information Commissioner's Office, recently recognised email address age estimation as a reasonable method as part of their updated guidance on age assurance for the UK's Children's Code. Next slide, please. So it's truly a global solution and is aligned with the requirements within several existing US state laws requiring age checks to access pornographic content. Whilst the granular detail of the legislative text often differs by state, there is often a lot of common overlap too, and this slide focuses on some of those elements. As an independent third-party verification service, we compare the email of an individual trying to gain access to a site with information that is available from a commercially available database or aggregate of databases. These data points often refer to public or private transactional data or exchanges, agreements or transfers of information between that individual and certain commercial entities or third parties, which often includes the likes of mortgage or credit lenders, utility providers, or employment entities. We do not retain data or use it for any other purpose other than age estimation, and it's deleted after an age check has taken place, also in line with many individual state requirements. So to wrap up, email address age estimation is new, it's novel, it's highly accurate, it's inclusive, it's privacy preserving, and it offers minimal friction, which means it's popular with both end users and age restricted businesses across many sectors. And on to the next slide, please, Ian. So hopefully that's been a useful insight into Verify My and our email solution. Thanks for your time. Do get in touch if you'd like any further information. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much, Andy. And so now, in a change to our advertised schedule, we're just going to have a little reprise. And in fact, we're going to go back to where we hoped to be earlier in the day with Professor Adam Kando from the Michigan State University. And Adam's going to take maybe a slightly different angle on the one we heard earlier from Brad about the court case. So over to you, Adam.
Well, thank you very much. And I regret any confusion in the beginning. Next slide. Yeah, so I'm sorry it's a long day, and I'm not going to make things more exciting by talking about law, but I think everything that was said in the last hour or two is quite relevant or potentially relevant to the cases the Supreme Court will decide in a few months. It is, as was mentioned before, the Free Speech Coalition v. Paxton, which challenged the age verification requirements in Texas's HB 1181. The reason why it's so important is because if the court approves this law, there are 20 other states that have similar ones, and there will be a tremendous market for age verification. And that's very important, of course, to you all. But also, I think what you have to tell the Supreme Court about how age verification works now, as opposed to the way it worked in 2004, when the court last looked at this issue, is very, very important. And I will start and I will end with a plea. Those of us who are trying to defend the Texas law before the Supreme Court, we need amicus briefs. And Ian's group has done a tremendous one. It's a great document. But the court generally looks even more favorably upon academics. Not because we're great or anything, but because we're just viewed as rightly or wrongly as not having an agenda. And I have struck out in trying to find academics who can, or sort of independent researchers who can write about this. And really, as we'll see, what needs to be written is pretty much a summary of the presentations today, showing that contrary to what was decided in Ashcroft, age verification is not burdensome. It's cheap. It does not disclose identity. It does not lead to the hoarding of biometric data or financial data, which was an assumption, as we will see in the Supreme Court's decision in Ashcroft, which essentially de facto struck down the federal age verification law passed in the early 2000s. Okay, so just quickly, the Free Speech Coalition, I don't want to go over stuff that Brad did a better job explaining than I could. The Fifth Circuit, which is the appellate court right below the Supreme Court, upheld the Texas's law that required age verification for children accessing porn, or to prevent children from accessing porn. And it was a tendentious decision. I concede that. Please don't quote me on that. Because what it said is it used a rational basis, a deferential standard of review, to determine that pretty much any law that regulated regulated obscenity would be constitutional. So it upheld the law because obscene speech is not protected. So what will the Supreme Court do when it gets this case? It has two choices. One is the nothing burger option. It will punt and will say, oh, Court of Appeals, you used the wrong standard of review. A higher scrutiny applies. Apply the scrutiny and get back to us, in which case we'll all be in the same place in 2 years. Or it could just say, okay, it applies the correct standard of scrutiny and decides the merits, and that would be a big deal because, as I said, it would determine the constitutionality of all these cases. Okay. Now, as I said, rational basis is this very low standard. It means any conceivable reason that a judge can think of for why a legislature would pass a law is okay. And the Fifth Circuit said, we accept the law under the standard. Next slide, please. And the problem is that, the older everyone thought before the Fifth Circuit that this higher standard would apply, called strict scrutiny. And that's what the court applied in the previous age verification case, Ashcroft v. ACLU. And when a court reviews a statute on strict scrutiny, it's a much more rigorous inquiry. The statute must advance a compelling state interest and must be narrowly tailored, meaning it must focus only on the prohibited speech, that government has a compelling interest to do so, and as little burden on other possible speech. And there has to be no restrictive alternative. Okay, next slide. So, in the last time the court looked at age verification, they said, well, look, this law gets strict scrutiny, in a ruling that is in tension with the Fifth Circuit's rational basis scrutiny, and then said, look, this federal law that requires AV, it doesn't pass strict scrutiny. Why? Well, for a variety of reasons. One is an esoteric legal issue that I'm sure none of you care about, and I had to drink several cups of coffee in order to care about, which is the definition of obscenity and whether it was broader or lesser. But the other reason, which is directly related to all of your interests, is that they said the burden on adult speech, on lawful, non-obscene adult speech, was too great. Why? Because there's plenty of sort of racy sexual material that's not obscene that adults have a right to receive, and the court was very, very concerned about the monetary costs and potential embarrassment that could deter potential viewers, and in that sense, the statute's requirement may restrict access to a site. And that's a quote from Justice Breyer. So they were really concerned about, well, we don't want, essentially, the founders of the American Republic were really concerned about the, the false feeling of being anonymous while browsing porn on the internet. So if we're going to win, if the court does go to the merits, that's the one if, and if we're going to win, we have to show that AV doesn't really burden adult speech in the same way that Ashcroft did. And Ashcroft was quite explicit. It bemoaned, having to show your credit card numbers or your government ID, which again in 2004, when Ashcroft was decided, was a big deal. I mean, I still remember, my mom refused to put her credit card on the internet until I think 2012. So, the court is really coming from a different time, and really needs your knowledge, your education to sort of say, look, there are ways that do this that do not impinge upon privacy, that do not impinge upon autonomy, that people can do, as I guess your phrase is frictionless and without cost. And we need someone of who doesn't have an apparent interest, who doesn't have a dog in the fight, who'd be willing to sign it. And we can get it written, we can help with all the legal stuff. But I mean, I hope I don't abuse Ian's very kind invitation by asking if anyone is out there interested to please contact me, because I think we could write something that the court would find very useful. So thank you. That's it.
Thank you very much. I shall now hand back to Tony to take us, I think, briefly through where we are on standards.
Yeah, I'll try and keep it brief as well. But first of all, I want to say to AVPA, thank you very much to Ian and all the members of AVPA. And just to point out that a lot of them do all the different things that you saw. So they're like multiple things, but we asked them to concentrate on one specific thing. So you've got an overview of everything there. And it is astonishing, there's things that are coming along. We've heard about the hand movements. There's some detailed research going into how you can do age estimation from your pulse. So information. There's all sorts going on. So it is a very different picture to 2004, and the speed with which technology has developed has been enormous. And I think I'm going to talk about the issue of how we then standardize that, how we bring some market structure around it. And I'm the editor of the international standards on this, ISO 27566. There's been others as well. There's PAS 1296 in the UK. There's IEEE 2089 as well. I'm going to talk particularly about the ISO document, which is in progress. A bit about us, first of all. Age Check certification scheme. We test that ID and age check systems work. That's what we do. So all these different things that you've seen, we've tested, we've looked at, we've analyzed. We make sure that they actually do what they say on the tin, and that you can trust and have confidence in them. It's really important to be very clear about there's a very big difference between age assurance and identity assurance. So identity assurance is, I am Tony. How do you know I'm Tony? Well, it says it on the introductory paper you've had. It says it on the and I could prove that to you. A fairly low level of assurance that you believe that I'm Tony. If you wanted to lend me some money, you'd want a bit more assurance. So I'd have to produce some evidence that I'm Tony. Very different. I am in my 50s is a different question. You don't need to know that I'm called Tony. You need to know that I am one of the 1.5 billion people on this planet that are in their 50s. And that is enough to be able to have age assurance and how secure you are in that knowledge. So it's very important that we understand the difference between age and identity assurance. And this is fundamental to this case, in the Paxton case, in relation to the fear that there is that people are going to have to prove who they are online. Adults will have to prove who they are online in order to be able to access protected free speech. The technology is such that that is not the case anymore. It may well have been in 2004, but it definitely isn't now. And so the standards that are developing around this, I keep pressing the wrong button, are ISO 27566. That is a number that sadly we're all going to become in this field very familiar with. I'm going to take you through very briefly what it covers. It is a framework, so it sets out very high level characteristics of age assurance systems that are expected to be able to meet international standards. So it looks at the functional characteristics. Does it do what it says it's meant to do? Is it correctly binding the result to the correct individual? Is it working in a functional way? Is it user acceptable? Performance characteristics. So we've seen lots of statistics thrown at you there. It's 99% accurate. It does this, it does that. It works in X number of seconds. So what are those performance characteristics? Privacy. Front and center, right in the middle of the whole framework, is all about privacy. It's all about how you protect that user from access to the data by the relying party, the double blind, how you make sure that the actual action of checking the age verification doesn't add to their digital footprint, doesn't create more footprint, doesn't create something that you could track and trace. And bear in mind, this is a global standard. There are parts of the world that if you are accessing online pornography and you are gay, that will get you locked up. In parts of the world, it will get you shot. So you've got to be really, really careful about the digital footprint and the privacy that is created around access to this information. Thankfully, in a free society like this, you don't have that kind of thing, but there are parts of the world where that is still the reality. It's got to be secure. This information has got to be secure. You've got to be able to ensure that it is being passed properly between the different parties. You've got to be able to ensure that the results, the tokens or the outputs, are not able to be interfered with and subject to injection attacks or presentation attacks and various other things that we've heard. And it's got to be acceptable. So you've got to have a right of redress, a right to be able to complain. It's got to be inclusive. It's got to be able to work for all members of society, including people who are identity challenged. There are many people who have never driven, never left their country, don't have national ID cards. What are they going to do? So how are you going to cope for and help them? And it's got to be transparent. So the final one is almost the most important one, is that every single age assurance system that is going to be out there under this framework will have a publicly available practice statement that will explain in actually quite a lot of detail exactly what it does, exactly how it works, and exactly how you can build trust and confidence in it. And that will be available from that provider's website and information for public consumption. It also goes into dealing with what are we actually talking about. And this is perhaps part of the hardest part of doing international standards, because we needed to come up with the clear parameters of what we are talking about so that anybody anywhere in the world in any language can understand it and follow it. So we've got three. There are three methods of age assurance. The first is age verification. And age verification is quite simply about calculating the difference between a verified year or date of birth and a subsequent date. That could be today's date, it could be another date, but it's that about how old that person was on that day. That is age verification. Verified is important. Year doesn't necessarily need to be the exact date, and the date of birth is also important. Age estimation. That's the analysis of biological or behavioral features of humans that vary with age. Very, very carefully there, that is not biometrics. Biometrics is something different. Biometrics is about the unique identification of individuals from their biometric features or their biological features. Age analytics is not about identifying individuals. Age analytics is about the use of machine learning and AI algorithms to be able to look at things that vary with age. And the third one, this is one that has been around for years but has never really been properly defined, is what we call age inference. And age inference is where you're not trying to work out their exact date of birth or their or whether they are what they are or how old today, or using age analytics. You're simply looking at verified information which can indirectly imply that they are under a certain age or over a certain age. And I use this as a good example. In order to be a airline captain under federal aviation legislation, you've got to be over 21. That's age inference. If you can prove that they're an airline captain, you can prove that they're over 21. That's simply what age inference is. Takes forever to develop standards, I can tell you. It's very hard work. You've got a lot of international diplomacy to do, and that's not my strong suit. But we're working on it, and we've got to the point where we are about to, I believe, this autumn publish a draft international standard, which goes out for a ballot. There is then a period of translation. We have to translate it into different languages around the world because it's an international document. And then there is a final approval. And we should get to the point where sometime around May, June time, 2025, we will have ISO 27566 Part 1, the framework. There may be 2 or 3 other parts that come after it in relation to guidance and in relation to how you do conformity assessment. We're still working on those. So that is the standards development. I just wanted to, before I hand back to Ian for the last couple of speakers, I just wanted to say thank you very much to everybody for listening today and for attending. And thank you to NCOSE for your kind hospitality. And hand back to Ian, who's going to close us out.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. We've got. I think we have one more guest speaker to go. I'm just going to talk very briefly. Hopefully we've already made the case that age assurance is not burdensome. You've seen how you hold your hand up, it takes 10 seconds. You smile, it takes 2 seconds. You wave your ID at your cell phone and it reads the card in the ID, and it takes 1.5 seconds. But it's still a bit annoying if you have to do it on every single website or app that you go to. So one thing that we've been working on is interoperability and reusability. So you prove your age once on one site, and then you can visit other websites and not have to repeat the process. I won't, given it's late in the day, go into the detail, but we've been working on a solution with funding from Safe Online, which is a global fund combating child sexual abuse. And we've come up with something we call Age Aware. And this will essentially allow you to agree to accept a token on your device when you've done an age check. And then other apps and websites can look for that token, and they will have the confidence to know you're already checked, and they don't need to ask the question again, get you to repeat the performance. And this is still going to be anonymized. It works with a token. It's interoperable. It meets that double blind requirement where nobody can track you, see where you've gone, and the website doesn't know who you are. It's on your device, and I've said it's EU wallet enabled, but I could have said it's LA wallet enabled. I could have said it works with your mobile driver's license. So you can derive these tokens from those pieces of government ID, which are increasingly becoming digital these days. This is our beautiful diagram, which is, as I say, too much to go into this evening. But one of the things we've tried to build into this is the ability to create a sustainable market, so that people are willing to provide this service and they can get paid for it, which is very hard to do if you make it so anonymous that nobody knows anybody else in the market, because nobody can charge anybody for their services. So that's one of the things that we had to try and fix as we were trying to deal with some of those new regulatory requirements we saw from countries like Spain and France recently. So that's the work we've been doing on Age Aware. Also, we wanted to make the point that we don't believe that the only answer is age verification. And I don't want to perjure ourselves before the Supreme Court here and undo all our legal arguments, but we would not say that you should rely entirely and only on age verification. We think it's probably one of the better methods because it's applying the control as close as possible to the harmful content. But there are some other alternatives. And at this point, we'd just like to invite Peter Gentala, who's the Senior Legal Counsel from our host today, NCOSE, to just talk a little bit about some of the other initiatives they've been championing. Over to you, Peter, and thank you for being so patient.
Thank you, Ian. Of course. Well, on behalf of the team at NCOSE, I just want to welcome everyone once again. Thank you for coming and taking part in this very important conversation. And for me, it's been an encouraging conversation because it's demonstrated once again that there is so much room for optimism. Simply put, the technology is up to the challenge. The dangers are there, the risks are there, but the technological solutions are also more than capable. And what we're battling with, at least in the United States, is the tendency of the law to kind of lag behind the technology. And as Adam presented and as Brad presented, I think you have a sense that the Supreme Court 2 decades ago was presented a very cramped perspective on the ability of technology to provide safety. And in a sense, one of the goals that we have now is to project the optimism that's out there because of the dynamic solutions that are available. Just hearing from all of you, the document authentication solutions, the OCR solutions, the digital ID, facial recognition and estimation, two-factor authentication, on-device assurance, all of these things can work and have a role for a reasonable regime to establish age assurance and protect children from the most harmful sexual material that's out there. One of the things that I think we need to focus on, when you just think about the various diverse applications of the technology that we've been discussing this afternoon, is that it fits with the basic principle. The diversity is necessary because of the basic principle of security in connected societies. The basic principle of cybersecurity is that multiple layers of risk require diverse and multiple layers of response. And I think that's what we're seeing here when we focus on the specific risk of children being sexualized online, being presented with sexually graphic material that is not age appropriate for them, or even to be connected. And frankly, back in 1998 and 2024 or 2004 when the Supreme Court is looking at these issues for the first time. The ability of predators to use connected devices, to use the internet to communicate with children and to groom them was nowhere near as prevalent as it is now. And that's another thing that we really need to establish for the court, is that there are dangers that are applicable in some of the most connected ways that are there. So one of the challenges that I'd like you all to just kind of join with me in thinking about a little bit is that it's not just the internet that poses these risks. It is also the devices that many children, many young people have in their pockets or in their backpacks every day. And so at NCOSE, we favor solutions, multiple solutions across multiple platforms. And so when we're thinking about platform-based risks, like some of the worst actors out there that are allowing sexually graphic and non-consensual image-based sexual abuse on their platforms, certainly children should be prevented. There should be age gates on those. But then there's also other applications and platforms that are connecting predators to children through having laxed communication protocols and things like that. So age gating is going to be necessary across multiple platforms. And one of the most important things, I think, that if we could kind of measure our success when we get to the Supreme Court is, does the court endorse a solution? Has the court given communities latitude to embrace multiple forms of technology for multiple forms of risk? And all of you are stepping up to the challenge, and I just want to commend you for that. And I hope that at least in my home jurisdiction, the United States, that we'll have a much more flexible approach that gives both state and local governments and the federal government the ability to encourage industries like your own and solutions like your own. So thank you very much. I really appreciate all the time that you've put into this and just the vision that you have for a safer, connected future for all of us. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Peter. So that's the end of our presentation. Thank you for your patience as we went slightly over time, but I hope you thought it was worthwhile to see some of those exciting methods. I think 5 years ago when we did this, we had sort of 3 methods and 6 members. So they each had to talk about the same one twice kind of thing in order to share it around our membership. And now we've got all that diversity. What our brief to the Supreme Court says is just to reiterate that, age assurance is accurate, it's privacy preserving, it's secure, it's effective, it's convenient, it's not expensive, it's accessible by everybody, so it's inclusive, it can be enforced, and it's certifiable, so we can know that it works. And so that's the case we make in our brief. And I just conclude by saying, look, if we can put a man on the moon, then we can verify your age online without disclosing your identity. Because frankly, and literally, it is just not rocket science. It's very straightforward. It's quite clever tech, but actually the essence of it is pretty straightforward. And so we hope that that's something that the court will understand when they come to consider the Texas case and any others in this category. So thank you all very much. Thank you very much to NCOSE for having us again, and we appreciate it. Thank you.